All right. Today, I wanted to talk about AI. And Jeff Bernheisel was on Facebook saying, "Hey, I've dug deep into AI. If anyone wants to talk about it, let me know." And there's nobody that I know that digs as deep into something as Jeff. Jeff is lead marketing and sorry, that was bad. I'll cut that out. Jeff is a lead marketing and growth specialist at Breakthrough Broker. And I have seen some of the amazing things you've done. I've seen you dig deep into SEO and become a master at it, copywriting, and just all the things you do. You go in very strong and you want to know it at a high level. So I think AI is blown up recently. And I know that you've really gone into this. So thank you so much for being on here today.
Yeah, thank you. I do want to preface something really fast and say that even though I don't even know how to phrase this, but I told the person yesterday that I was talking to, I was like, I'm not an expert at this. This is all I want to say is I am not an expert in AI because it's so damn new that I cringe when somebody says that they're an expert at something. And I'm like, this shit's been around for a couple years, but it has really taken off in the last few months. And now I see these experts putting on master classes and charging realtors money to do that. And I'm like, that's what pissed me off the other day, which is what prompted that big post that I did. Was I was on a webinar and these guys were like, they framed them as AI experts in the field, and they've been using AI to get a bunch of real estate leads, and let us sell our masterclass to you for $297 and we'll teach you how to do it. And then they kind of went into it and I was just like, oh my God. So I want to preface it with I know a lot about this stuff, but I am by no means considered an expert in my own mind because I truly don't think there can be one at this point. Like, this stuff is evolving every day.
Well, I came across AI a few months ago. My brother actually told me about it and showed me like some headlines and blog posts you could do. And I played with it, but what I realized is I wasn't really asking it the right questions. And then it popped up in December. And then there was more things. I was like, oh, okay. It's kind of like when you try anything new, you just don't know what to do with it. Like the first time Twitter came out, you're like, what am I supposed to talk about? What? And so now
We'll
playing
go
with it
back
a
and
little
look at your
more.
first tweet.
Yeah.
I forget what mine was, but it's something like, I think I just said, hello, is anybody listening?
That's I'm here, whatever, something like that, right? So the power is super, super amazing. Let's talk about ChatGPT, which is the big one and the most available one that's free.
Mhm.
What what should we know about that as real estate agents right now?
Um, so many things. Where I'm getting the questions, I mean, similar to like besides the what is it question, can you explain what it is and what it does? What I want to clarify and what you kind of touched on already is the AI as we know it and as we're being sold, if you want to call it that. I call it, I mean, it's basically snake oil at this point. The AI as we all have in our brains from Terminator and all of these movies where the computers are thinking on their own, that's artificial intelligence. That's not here yet. Like, that's coming. Google Google's doing some scary stuff where they actually had to kind of like unplug it because it was starting to learn on its own and it was becoming a true version of AI. What we see with Chat GPT and Open AI is kind of the underlying platform. Chat GPT, it's so hard to say,
It
GPT,
is.
and then GPT-4 that's about to come out is basically what developers can use if they're going to start their own. So you've got Jasper, Copy.ai, all these companies that are using these underlying Chat GPT-3. So that's kind of the background on how all that works. But what this is it's not even true AI. It's just machine learning at this point. So the scary part is we are the ones that are teaching it.
Yes.
And we're doing that by putting in these prompts. So what you just said earlier about, you know, everybody thinks like, oh, if I just go put in something into this, it's going to spit out this like gorgeous piece of copy or these cool images or whatever. And the first time you play with it, you put in something and then most of the time we're disappointed. We're like that's it. Like, it spits out some garbage and you're just like, oh, well, that sucks. Like, what do I do with this? So the biggest thing people are shocked by, and especially when I show them or when I read to them the prompts that I have to put in to get out the output that I want, they're like, holy cow, you have to put a lot of time and effort and energy into explaining prompts, explaining to the machine what you want it to give you. And I think people don't realize that. And so a couple of things are going to happen. You'll see some job openings in the next, we're probably already starting to see them, like prompt engineers, I think they're calling themselves.
Huh.
People that take the time to learn and mess with it enough that they realize, if you tell me this is the output you want, I need to know what to go put into the machine to get that. And right now, if you told me I want, if I want a story or a blog post or whatever, if I put that machine in front of you and said, okay, tell it what you want, people type in what they want and it spits out this garbage. And they're like, that's not at all what I was envisioning or thinking. And then I show them, here's what you're going to have to tell it. And then we go do that. And they're like, holy cow, that's kind of a lot. It's a lot of work almost. So it's not as easy. People are making it sound, and these gurus and their master classes and all that crap, they're like, hey, if you just tell the machine you want an article about X, I'm like, that's not entirely true. It kind of is, but not really. So there's a lot of, it's that old saying, garbage in, garbage out. You take the time and effort and energy to put a good prompt in, you're going to get some amazing, like mind-blowing stuff, but you have to know how to do that.
So I've started a folder of my chat GPT prompts and stuff. And what I realized the more I used it is, like, if I know the subject, I see the flaw in it. If I don't know the subject, I'm easily tricked. Right.
Yeah.
So I had it write me something about real estate. And I was like, that was pretty good. Like the 6 best reasons to live in Beaverton or whatever. But what it really looked like was a 10th grader went on a bunch of websites and compiled a list.
Yeah.
And I actually had it last week's podcast. I wrote out what I wanted to say, and then I had ChatGPT rewrite it. And I had to keep playing with it. I was like, well, look, this is more conversational, because it sounded more like a textbook.
Yeah.
And it's really about those prompts is really the big thing. But I played with it over the weekend with some friends that didn't know anything about it. Who, one of them, it just really blew his mind. He's a 4th grade teacher. He's like, how are kids not going to be using this? It wrote his lesson plan for him.
Mm-hmm.
It wrote his sub plan for him, and it had the structure. He's like, what?
Yeah.
Well, we had it do a rap. And I said, do it in the style of Eminem. And Eminem has a certain way that he mixes words. Oh, it was Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Write that as if it's an Eminem rap. And it's like Rudolph something, the True Dolph, which is really a specific thing, the way that Eminem would do it. And then someone goes, well, have him change it to Biggie. And it was amazing how much it changed it. So it's getting better and better. And it's just
better by the day, literally, because we are teaching it. So going back to what I was saying, it's machine learning. It's not true AI.
Right.
It's getting better and better by the day. And what it does is it's looking for patterns in things, right? And so by us feeding it the prompts and then the examples, and of course it's being fed, turn this thing loose, it goes and reads the internet, for lack of better words. So it has read the internet theoretically, and then it's watching videos, it's getting audio input, it's the learning part that's going into this is the crazy stuff to me. And then it's looking for patterns. And so if, like you saying, it's actually a really good example. It's one of the best ways to get it to spit a topic or to spit something out in a way that you want it to, where it doesn't sound too professional or too scripted or too AI-y, if that's a word, AI-y, is to tell it, in the words, like, I don't know if you saw it the other day, but I did a dating bio for myself where I was like, but do it. So I said, here are 6 points of I am about me. I am this, 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 this. I'm looking for this, 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 and this. Write a dating bio for a dating website in the style of William Shakespeare. And it spits out this amazing dating bio as if William Shakespeare had written it, doth lady have, it's all that kind of verbiage. And that's one of the best ways to get it to do that. If you don't want it to be too scripted and too machine sounding, is to say, make it sound like Ryan Reynolds or Eminem or whatever. You've seen the Ryan Reynolds commercial, like,
Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, genius use of it right there. But I on one of my prompts, I'll show you, like, if I'm when I explain this to somebody, I'm like, here's I'm using this for ideation, I'm using it for bullet points, for lists, and then I'm going to create the finished product on my own. I'm not putting a prompt into AI and expecting a finished product. I think that's where a lot of people are going to screw themselves. And that's where I was watching this webinar the other day, and they were basically saying, like what you said, or what my example would be. If I'm a realtor, and I am, by the way, if I want to go create an article about, the 6 best reasons to buy a condo in the Pearl District in 2023, and I tell the AI to do that, it's going to give me a list of 6 reasons. Accuracy be damned, whatever. I know the market, I can tweak it, whatever, but I don't want to take that and go throw that on my website. I want to take that and tweak it. I might make a video out of it. I should make a video out of it. I can go write a blog post or whatever. Or I can tell the AI, take those 6 points and now go write a blog post, and then it'll spit out a blog post. But it'll still sound robotic AI, and so on. But so in the end of all of this prompting that I do, one of the things, and I can read it because I have it written down somewhere. So I'll say, perfect. I talk to this thing like it's in the room with me. So I'm always like, hey, perfect, thank you. And I'm like, if it takes over the world and starts killing us, at least remember that I was pleasant and I was
I'm very
nice.
polite to my AI.
So I'm like, perfect. Now please rewrite that in a more casual and relaxed tone, sprinkling in common English slang phrases and a couple emojis to convey emotions better. That's how I end everything. So it'll rewrite whatever I just had it do. It'll rewrite it, but it'll make it sound more human, throws a couple emojis in, gives it some slang, so that if somebody reads it, they're like, oh, that doesn't sound like a textbook. It sounds like a human wrote it. Anything, if you're doing a Facebook post or a blog post or a webinar output, whatever, like, there's so many cool things you can do with this. I always end it with that because it makes it sound more human. And
Now,
so,
one of the things that really stood out to me in your post was that agents are going to go after this because to write a blog post in 10 seconds is fantastic, because we're told content, content, content. But you made the point that Google has the ability, or will easily have the ability, to figure out which articles are written by AI.
Yep.
And there's a good chance that that can affect your search engine optimization. So the content you're creating may not be that great for your thing. Well, I'm thinking about 3 things at once. Sorry, I guess, but I'll stay on this one. And so that can backfire on you.
Yep.
And yeah, let's just stick with that.
Yeah. So, and I'm sure we'll cover the other 2 thoughts that you were having. In that webinar that I was watching, that's what those guys were saying. They were like, look, this guy was like, I've got 3 real estate websites and I've got them all 100% powered by AI content. So we had several hundred articles that he had prompted and had written and pasted into this website. And he's like, saying they're getting a bunch of search engine leads from it. And I'm like, I call bullshit on that, because you've only been doing this for a few months and you and I know damn well it takes way longer than that. So I call bullshit immediately on that. But then I'm like, even if that was the case, we'll switch over here to Google. So Google has always had the stance of high quality content. It's about a user experience and high quality content. Every year they put out what they call the quality guidelines. And if you've ever read it, it's ultra boring most of the time. Sometimes I don't even understand it, but it's very complex. It's literally like Google telling you via part of their algorithm, this is what you should do if you want good SEO. One of the things they've always said from the dawn of time of Google was, don't put out low quality content. Now, the problem is, and I know this better than anybody because I used to do it and I used to take advantage of it, and I made a ridiculous amount of money from it. I would put out shitty content and do a bunch of backlinks to it, and it would rank. I would sell ads or do whatever I'm doing on that website, and I would make money from that. And I did it over and over. At one point, I had like 250 websites with low quality. So this is where I make this distinction. Back then, I would pay a writer to write an article. I might pay $15 for somebody somewhere to write a decent article, and I would go in and I would tweak it. And then I would take that one article and I would put it into a content spinner, which, for lack of better words, it's like a blender. It just gives you synonyms for all these different words. So I could say, I want this article to be 70% unique, because in Google's eyes, it always wants unique content. You don't want to get that like duplicate content penalty that we always hear about. So I would say, I want this to be 60% unique or 80 or whatever the number it was. And I want 20 of those. And this spinner software would literally give me 20 articles, all the same, but very different in that, if that makes any sense. Because it's using synonyms and it would move things around. So if Google scanned all of these articles, theoretically, it would be like, these are all 20 different articles. But the problem was, within that software that does that and the output that it spits out, it's using characters a little different. So the best example I can give you is actual quotes. So if you went and read one of those articles and you notice like some of the quotations would be like, there's different, like it's ASCII characters. So if you know what ASCII characters are, they're old school code. And so old school example of this is the ASCII characters of quotes were just a little different. They were like shaped different and they were tilted funny than if you typed quotes on your keyboard. You would notice them if they were side by side. You'd be like, well, those are weird. They're different. So you get a pattern in there that Google can immediately see and goes, that's shit. That's low quality spun content. Oh, here's a bunch of them. Oh, there's 20 of those. And it just devalues all of them. And then those websites fall off the face of the earth. And I had that happen to all of my websites like overnight one time, because Google had kept saying, don't do this. Don't do this. We're telling you, do not do this. It was working. And it was working really well. And then one night they flipped the switch. I think it was the penguin update or the polar bear.
Penguin messed up a lot of people.
Yeah. And it was like the day they flipped that switch, my world came crumbling down, because I was making $300-$400 a day from those websites.
Wow.
Autopilot. Like I wasn't doing anything. I just wake up every morning and look at my phone and be like, oh, I've already made $150 today. This is awesome. And then that immediately just went away. So forward now into the AI stuff, these AI robots are creating this content, and whether it's copy and pasted directly from it just into your website, or you copy and paste it into Word or wherever, there's patterns in there that we can't detect. So we're reading through, we don't see any of this stuff, but behind the scenes in the computer code world, it's got this like, I forget what it's called, the cryptographic, it's a hard word to say too, cryptographic watermarking. Watermarking. You can Google AI watermarking and get a bunch of information about it. But Google can read that. And there are, like you mentioned, your teacher friend. Immediately when I did my first paper in AI, I was like, holy shit, if I would have had this in college, I would have gotten way better grades, first of all. But I'm like, God, how are these teachers going to like combat this? I mean, you can no longer say, go write a paper about X and trust that the kid isn't going to use this. So how are they going to, they're going to have to drastically change how they teach and what they require out of this. Like, so these professors and students get together and they actually went and built this system that detects it. And then Google's got their own version. I'm sure there's dozens of them now, but they can detect the code behind the scenes of the AI content, and it'll detect that it was written by an AI. And so, whether the teacher just scans all the papers through that and goes, oh yeah, like everything's good, and like, except for that guy, you fail. That's what they're going to have to do. But yeah, like you said, for SEO purposes, do not use this and expect to get a ton of traffic. Use it if you're going to use it and write an article and have it on your website, and you're going to share that on social media. I said earlier, if you're going to do a video about it, like that's probably one of the best uses. But do not expect it to bring in web traffic. And then do not do so much of it that your website is full of that, because Google will eventually just pimp slap your website and it'll go away. It'll disappear from all search rankings because it's low quality content like that. And they can tell.
So there's part of my question, and I mean, you answered it in a way, but if your websites were ranking high enough to get the ad dollars, then that says the people wanted to be there. So if the AI can write better than me or whoever else is using it, so it's actually better quality, why does Google care? Why would
Yeah. Well,
that's
and
my question, I guess.
I always used to, in my mind, I'm like, look, the ads that the ads that I had on my websites that I was getting paid for were the Google AdSense. So Google's taking a percentage of that. So I'm like, why would Google penalize me when they're making 40 cents out of every dollar that I make? They're taking 40 cents. So like if you got an idiot like me that's going to go do this and basically just give Google a bunch of money, why would they penalize me? And for the longest time, I was always like, they're never gonna penalize us because I'm making them money. Well, then they
Right.
did. And then I was like, well, I guess like I don't, there's no answer to that question. There's no good answer. But you are right. I mean, and this is where it's a weird thing. Is like I guarantee you AI can write better than 80% of the world's population right now, maybe
Yeah.
higher. So if that's the case, the argument is it's actually better content than, my cousin is a horrible writer. He sucks at grammar. He's just not a good person, but like he shouldn't be writing white paper style articles for a website. But if he does, and then an AI does, and the AI is better, like wouldn't you want the AI content to be shown? Yes, theoretically. Except for, I guess the best way to answer that is it's cheating. It's cheating in the sense of a human didn't create it and think about it and put the effort in. I don't know. There's no answer to that in my book yet. That's why I'm not an expert.
Well, this weekend, like I said, I was talking about ChatGPT to everybody, and we're playing with the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and stuff. And my wife made a point because she has a computer science degree. She goes, well, it's not AI. It's
Right.
just a language model, machine learning.
Yeah.
And that actually kind of scares me more because we actually haven't tipped into what AI can do. And when we think that this is AI, we're like, oh, it's like a 8-year-old or whatever you wanted to say. And what can happen is kind of nuts. I did hear one place that was guessing, and I haven't been able to verify it, but they're saying that OpenAI is costing about $30 million a day because of the servers.
Mm-hmm.
There's a good chance we're going to get hooked on this, much like a drug, and then it's going to cost something.
Oh, yeah, 100% it's going to cost. Like they're already, I mean, things are open right now to play with, but they're already talking about, like I pay for Jasper. I use OpenAI. I use their playground, sandbox, whatever you want to call it. But I actually pay for Jasper already because of the prompts and a lot of the cool things that they do. And it's $40 a month, whatever. But yeah, I mean,
So, well,
oh, go ahead.
let's talk about Jasper real quick because I saw their ads, but just like I've seen this technology, kind of like those guys that were over promising on their masterclass, I saw AI. I was like, is it really? And so I kind of ignored it. Now I'm realizing it's real. You've played with ChatGPT and Jasper. What's similar and who's better or whatever?
For most people, if you can get away, I would say if you can, most people can get away with just using the Chat GPT-3 sandbox playground, whatever, for free right now, limited. They're going to start charging for credits. What Jasper did, and the funny thing about Jasper, so I have a friend that works there, and he's been this copywriter sales type guru guy forever. The difference is very early on, they started feeding Jasper, and before it was called Jasper, it was actually called Jarvis. I don't know if you know this, but they got cease and desist from Disney because
Oh,
Jarvis from the Marvel universe and all of that stuff. I think it was Disney, but what is that? Iron Man that has Jarvis, right? So yeah, they got sued basically and said you can't use that name, so they had to change it to Jasper. But very early on, they started feeding their version of it with nothing but copywriting and sales scripts.
oh,
And so from like way before they released it out to the public, they went and found all of the old school copywriter guys, and they were like, here's an example of an AIDA framework: attention, interest, desire, action. That's what this is. Here's the Brit, like here's all these different copywriting. Here's all these different sales scripts. And that's what this is. So they're teaching their version of it to be more along the like internet marketing guys. That's why I found it and know about this dude and start paying for it, because that's my world. So in my mind, it's better in that sense because they have trained it to be better for that specific use. For a real estate agent, does that make a difference? Maybe. I mean, do we want our content to be a little more salesy and persuasive? Depends on what the content is.
Right.
Part of one of the prompts that I do is I have it in here somewhere, blah 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 blah. Yeah, so I say, please write a persuasive Facebook post to announce this webinar and use headline number 3. So again, you have to tell it like, I want this to be. So the first prompt in that thing is, and this is how I start out. Actually, if you want me to just read this big prompt,
Yeah.
this took a couple days of playing with it. So this is for creating a first-time home buyer campaign. And this is literally a prompt that I would do if I'm a real estate agent and I want to go do a first-time home buyer campaign that I want some help with here. So look, if I told you, hey, Mike, I want you to tell AI that you wanted to do a first-time home buyer campaign, you'd be like, hey, hey, Jasper, or hey, whatever. I always say, hey, like I'm talking to Siri and Alexa, which is just how we're trained. But hey, I'm a realtor and I'm thinking about doing a first-time home buyer seminar. What should I do? It'll tell, like, it'll give you a bunch of shit, right? That's where most of us start. That's how I started.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, that's cool, but not great. How can I make that better? So here, this what I'm going to read you is how I made this better over like several iterations of it. So this is what I'll say. I want you to act as an advertiser and marketer. You will create a campaign to promote a product or service of your choice. You will choose a target audience with demographics of a typical first-time buyer, develop key messages and slogans, select the media channels for promotion, and decide any additional activities needed to reach goals. My first suggested request is, I need help creating an advertising campaign for a real estate agent that teaches first-time homebuyer classes to people looking to buy a home in Portland, Oregon in 2023.
Wow.
See the difference? So like, took me a minute to come up with that. Took me a few days actually to get this dialed in. And every time I would do it, it was like, it's getting better and it's getting better and better. And then finally, after I do that, I'm like, holy shit. It literally created a marketing plan for a first-time home buyer. Like it's like your target demographic is age 30 to 45, higher income level than normal. Like it goes into pretty good detail. So then I'm done with that. And I'm like, awesome. Now please give me some ideas for a webinar that would attract that target audience. And it spits out like 6 webinar ideas for first-time home buyers in that demographic target audience. And I say, great, can I get an outline for number 3? And I could even expound on that. The last time I did it, I was like, great, can I get an outline for a 60-minute webinar for number 3? And it will give me a breakdown of all of this stuff. And that's where I was like, holy shit, because I'm very familiar with first-time buyers and what is needed for the lending and all that. It goes into all of that. And I'm like, oh. Then I go further. Can you write me 6 clickbait style promotional headlines for the outline you just created? Because now I'm switching over to the marketing side. I want to go promote this webinar. Now, in between, I have since found a platform that will actually make the fucking slides for you. It's called Slides.ai. Slides, I don't know how if I'm pronouncing it, Slides.ai, slidesai.io. You put that outline into it, it will literally go create Google Slides with images and everything.
Oh my God.
And so I'm like, again, just blown away. So then I say, please write a persuasive Facebook post to announce this webinar and use headline number 3. And then perfect. Now rewrite that Facebook post in a more casual and relaxed tone, sprinkle in common English slang, and add some emojis. And when I do that, if I go through that whole process, at the end of it, I've got, like the marketing plan for a first-time buyer campaign, a webinar outline, slides for my webinar, a Facebook post for it to promote it. And then literally I just have to tell it. Well, then I don't have to tell it anything. Then I have to go put that on Facebook, put the slides up, schedule the webinar, schedule the class, whatever. I mean, it like that's how we should be using this, right? You can go
Do you
write blog.
what?
So you can go write blog posts. You can go do a bunch of other cool shit with this, but like that's where I'm doing stuff.
Did you test? This was Jasper, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did you test putting it in ChatGPT?
Yeah. So if you do, and like I did today, even some side by side, and it's very similar. It's I mean, like I said, it's framed a little more salesy, I guess is the best way to describe that, but very, very similar. If you're asking it for, like today, I was using it for some, like writing an email. The email was targeted for a software company that has done a demo of their software, and the person, I had sketched like several of these. So they had scheduled a demo and then no showed. Then they had scheduled a demo, got the demo, and we just never followed up. And then the other one was scheduled a demo, closed, used the software for a while, but then quit using it and went and did something else with somebody else, and we want them back. So in that one, I was like, write a "we want you back" style email, and I did both of them side by side, and they were very, very similar. I mean, if you think about it, it makes sense. Like ChatGPT 3 is what is powering Jasper.
Okay.
Theoretically, Jasper just has some layers of training above and beyond. But ChatGPT 3 has millions more people using it because it's free right now. So the training level that it's getting is probably going to surpass Jasper. And then when we get to GPT-3 or GPT-4, which is coming in the next month or so, that's supposed to be like 10 times better than what we are dealing with right now. Which, again, like, how does that even, because we're training it by the day.
Well, the saying is, if it's free, you're the product.
Yeah, 100%. So right now we are training this thing to eventually take our money and probably kill us in the end. And
Well,
I made a joke the other day. I said, every time I'm doing all this stuff, sometimes I have stopped doing this now because it got old, but I would get done. And then the last prompt I would say, when are you planning to take over the world? And the last time I did this, it was on a totally unrelated subject, but it said in 2023. And it was just like, prior to that, it was giving me stuff like, I'm just an AI. I'm not programmed to take over the world, that kind of gibberish. And then this time it was like, actually, this is the year. So,
well, I remember when Siri came out, apparently Jobs gave it a little bit more attitude. It was a little bit more vanilla and somehow up the just sarcastic little quotient on it. So maybe they added that to ChatGPT.
And a lot of people don't realize this is a good thing to learn. And I don't want to say you have to learn it the hard way. It usually doesn't have a big effect, but whatever platform you're in, every time you start up a new chat or a new window or whatever you want to call it, it learns as you go. So that's why, like, I read through those prompts, like it keeps track of what I wrote and what the output was. And then I can say, okay, cool, now go do this. And it's learning throughout this chat. So whatever the topic is, the silo you're in, whatever that topic is, it's kind of framing everything around that. And so in this case, the one where it was like, actually 2023 is the year, I was like, the whole thread, if you want to call it that, was about global domination and war and politics and all sorts of crazy stuff. So if I asked it that question in the real estate, like if I was talking about, a neighborhood and buying real estate and blah, 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 and then I just randomly asked it that, it would have a weird response because it'd be different than the thread. So each thread has its own like learning pattern silo, if you want to call it that. So that's why every time you go to use something like this, you need to start a new chat, new thread, so that it clears the memory, kind of, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Because I was going in and putting a topic in, getting it, copy, paste, and then I would just go do it again. I wasn't clearing, I wasn't refreshing. So once I learned that, I started going in and doing it individual each time, and now I'm getting better responses.
Okay, that's good to know. Mm-hmm. So I took one of my friend's listing descriptions.
Mm-hmm.
Make your hobby farm dreams come true with this picturesque property in wine country. Gaze at majestic views from the wraparound deck. So that's the first 2 lines. Not bad. It's pretty good. So I wanted to see what ChatGPT would do. And I said, make this more persuasive.
Hmm.
Experience the rural life you've always dreamed of at this breathtaking property in wine country. Take in majestic views from the wraparound deck, surrounded by beautiful gardens, mature trees, and a private vineyard with 3 grape varieties. So it took the second line and kind of smashed in, but it made it nice. And I said, well, let's make it fancy. And I didn't even know what fancy was, but I was like, it's a different prompt.
Mm-hmm.
Fulfill your hobby farm aspirations at this picturesque retreat nestled in the rolling hills of wine country. Admire the breathtaking vistas from the wraparound veranda surrounded by idyllic, I never use that word idyllic, it's a great word, gardens, orchards of mature fruit trees, and a private vineyard bursting with 3 varieties of grapes. I also said keep it within the same amount of characters because we're limited in RMLS. And this is probably one of the most powerful things that's not going to get you in trouble with SEO. It's not going to look whatever. It's taking you away. You talk and just punching it up. And I think those are pretty good. I mean, you have the marketing expertise. I think that punched it up pretty good.
Those are great. And it's one of those things where, if I'm an agent, like this is a probably extreme example, but if I'm an agent that has always sold $250,000 houses, and then all of a sudden my uncle out of the blue reaches out and says, hey, I've got my $3 million mansion I'm about ready to sell, and I want you to list it for me. Like, holy shit, what do I go right? Like that example that you just gave is like, you start with what you know and ideate throughout the process to get it where you need it to be. And that's a really good example of that, is just multiple prompts. And you mean, you can literally say, I just want this to sound a little more fancy, and it would know. I want to sound smarter. I mean, you can do all of that stuff. You can actually ask it if you don't know, like if I don't know a prompt to get it to be fancier, I can say, what prompt would you use to get this to sound a little fancier? And it would tell me. And then, okay, use that in rewriting that story or that phrase or that sentence or whatever.
So I know that the appraisal industry is likely headed down towards algorithms and probably dropping appraisers at some point in the future, depending on how things go. That's the concern for them. And AI can make that easier with looking at these different homes and taking things into account. It saves the companies money. Where do you see this helping and harming real estate for realtors?
I don't see any harm in it yet, other than what we've talked about, using the content stupidly. And I'm always skeptical, me. Like I'm silent on this for the last 6 months until something triggers me, and then I'm like, wait a minute. But I've been trying to figure out, is there a downfall? I'm a copywriter, I'm a marketing guy. Like, if anybody should be worried, it's me. But no, this is a tool. In my mind, this is a tool almost that's going to replace me needing an assistant. It saves me so much time, helps with writer's block. So there's so many benefits to it, and I just don't see a downside to it yet. Other than down the road, I know it's going to cost a lot more. I shouldn't say I know. I feel like it's super cheap right now. It's free in most cases, but when you want to get to the really, really, really good stuff that's coming, like that's going to cost us. The stuff that's Google's working on, like that's the shit that scares me when they say, and they won't talk publicly about it, but if you go into the like Reddit threads and some of the engineers that work there, where they basically had to pull the plug on the project that they were working on because the thing started thinking for itself and became almost what they called sentient, which is the bad robots. That's where the Terminator has to come and pay a visitor. What was that Will Smith movie where they're all
iRobot?
iRobot, yeah, like all of that stuff. That's scary. But when the machines start talking back and having attitude to you, that's when we're going to start having a problem. We're not there yet. This, like I said, this isn't even true AI. So for me as a real estate agent, I don't see a downside to this other than just in a whole, like, and this is the same with anything. It's, imagine being the first realtor to use pictures back in the day, right?
Video.
So, video, same thing. Like the first realtor to put a fucking billboard up on the freeway, like that guy was the man for a minute. And then the next day, somebody was like, shit, that's a good idea. I'm going to do that. Next thing you know, we're all doing it. So we're all going to have the most amazing listing descriptions in the next few years, right? We all use professional, but we don't. We all use professional photography, but we don't. Some people are lazy. Some people don't want to, whatever the reasons. I'm guilty myself. Like I was in a house one time that didn't deserve professional photography. I snapped a few pictures with my phone and got the hell out of there. I was like, I don't even want to waste the $800. It's just going to bring out more flaws. So, that's not a downside. It's just that eventually we're all going to be using this. So how good you get at using it is going to widen the gap. I heard Justin Tucker said that the other day. He's like, this is going to widen the gap. Same with video, same with photography. Like there are people that are still doing minimum, and then there's the rest of us that are trying to go above and beyond. And now this race gets smaller and smaller and smaller as we get to the top up there. So how do I get really, really, really good at using AI is what we should be asking ourselves.
That's where I think the conversation is going to be in the next X years, is especially like with the kids, when they're writing essays or whatever, and then trying to catch them. And the question is going to be about, look, what most people don't understand about why we learn math is just to help you think through problems. It's to help you see another avenue and work through things. And so what we're going to have to learn is how to ask better questions.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're just grunting to our friends and doing emojis, we're not learning how to phrase good questions. And quality of your questions is quality of your life, that kind of phrase. And this is where we'll come in with that AI, is knowing how to ask the questions, knowing the best way to come around to it. That's going to be part of the main education coming out, is doing that. It's going to be like a low-level programmer. And that's where I see a lot of this going in the short term.
One thing you just said, one of the most powerful things that this AI can do right now is programming. So back in the day, like I can have this AI go write me a WordPress plugin in code right now. I can say, I want to build a WordPress plugin that does this with this output. Bam, you have to use the prompts and dial it in. Or you can take a piece of code and stick it in there and say, this code is giving me an error. What's wrong with it, kind of thing. And it'll tell you. It is insane what it can do with code.
Yeah. Someone said that they asked it to write a code to turn their webcam on for some prompt. And it did it. It did it fine. And it was something you could have put on anybody's computer. Just simple.
So the cool thing is, down the road, like I've taken programming classes back in the day. My original aspiration, I got that word from AI, was to be a gaming programmer way back in the day. And then I went to college for that. And I was like, this sucks. This is so fucking boring. It is so bad that there's no way my little squirrel brain can pay attention to this. And I was out. It took, 3 classes. And I was like, no, I can't do this. Now I'm looking back and I'm like, man, again, if I would have had a tool like this in college, God knows where I'd be now or whatever. But would they have let that happen? Like I think we are going to have to figure out very, very quickly. And I know they're already figuring it out, how to keep this from dumbing down our society so bad, because this is all we do. And I felt bad, the first time, I'm at Breakthrough Broker and they're like, hey, part of my job is creating copy and, proofreading and doing some of the stuff that I do. Do I feel bad about using this as a tool to help me do that? And, in the beginning, I was kind of like, God, if they find out I'm using this, this is how I felt. I was like, if they find out I'm using this and it's not really me, am I going to get in trouble? They're not going to, like, the value isn't there anymore. But then I'm like, as I got more involved with it, I'm like, no, fuck that, because then I'm going to be like, hey, you think it's that easy? You try it and see what happens.
Well, so this is the interesting thing, is real estate agents in general are lone wolves, where they just try to make everything happen on their own. And They end up with terrible logos. They end up with terrible taglines. So many logos are rooftops because they think they need to have a roof to figure out people, so people know they're a real estate agent.
Right.
And they're going to get overconfident in the skills that they think they're getting from this, or the results they're getting from this, when they don't know that they're not doing that. So it's going to up some games, but it's going to still end up being at this mediocre level instead of hiring someone or going through a like breakthrough broker, which we'll talk about in a minute, like finding a good marketing thing, finding a good marketing company to really elevate.
Yep.
Is it just going to leave us even more just feeling more confident in our mediocrity of the skills we're not good at because we don't
It's
know
going to
what's
widen the
good?
gap. It's going to make it apparent to some of us. Some of us are going to think they're the coolest thing in the world. And you did mention something though for logos, like we haven't even talked about what it can do with images and all of that. And I was screwing around with that the other day. One of the first things I thought was, I had a vacant listing that I did some virtual staging with, and 4 or 5 years ago when that first came out, it was cool, but it didn't look great. Everything was like the scale was off and some weirdness. But now, like my guy that does it for $50 a pop for each image, which to me was worth it because I only do like 2 or 3 of those. But I was like, God, that's gonna screw them up really bad because I should theoretically be able to take a picture of my vacant room, whatever you want to call it, and just go tell the AI what I want. And so I tried that the other day, and it's not there yet. I don't know if you saw that
There's a
result.
tiny little couch.
Yeah, like the scalability, but again, I didn't tell it. I didn't prompt it correctly. I gave it the most basic prompt, which was, so I upload an image, and then I pretty much I just said, I want an orange modern L-shaped sectional in the corner of this room with a flat panel TV mounted to the brick wall playing the Dukes of Hazzard. And like you saw the output, it's this funky little orange couch. It is modern. And then on the wall, there's a TV with an orange sports car. It's not like the generally. So they have removed the ability, if you've noticed this, or maybe you haven't, like you can't go say, I want a picture of so-and-so drinking a Pepsi. So they're like branding of any sort, like they're trying not to get sued. So, if I say that Dukes of Hazzard, it showed an orange classic, I would say like Kid Rock looking, or Joe Dirt, one of those like Dodge Dart Hemis, whatever. It's a Challenger technically, but it shows the car, but it doesn't have like the Dukes of Hazzard logo and the General Lee and all of that stuff. It won't give you a Pepsi can or a Coke can. So one of my buddies was like, I want a picture of an anteater drinking or snore. He started out, well, like he wanted a picture of an anteater using its trunk to drink a Pepsi. So he did that. Well, the Pepsi can was blue and red, like Pepsi, but it wasn't a Pepsi can. It was just a blue and red with a white striped can. So generic Pepsi. So then he's like, all right, well, how about an anteater snorting Coke? The prompt that he had to use, he wanted the anteater using his trunk to drink, but he kept saying that, and it was messing up. Like the computer's not smart enough to do this. But eventually he said, I want an anteater snorting can of Coke. And it gave him what he wanted, which was the trunk in the can of Coke. Even though it wasn't Coke, it was a red and white can. But, you have to sometimes step outside of the way we normally think and think of like, all right, the computer's still dumb. I need to tell it exactly what it needs to know to give me what I want. Like that's hard for this kind of stuff. So, in my mind with the picture stuff, I was like, real estate photographers, specifically the ones that do virtual staging like that, should at least know how to do this and get better at it, because that's going to change things soon, where the average agent can go do that themselves, or at least try. And I mean, it'll get better than what you saw the other day.
It'll take some years to adopt to new technology, but it's going to swing. I mean, the whole art field is going to be really interesting. Just what you can create with AI doesn't make sense, and there's going to be copyright issues, and I think these AI companies are going to be sued once people can kind of figure out, hey, that's my style.
Yeah. So Seth Godin actually wrote a really good pretty short, but Seth Godin wrote a really good article about just that. And it was basically you can't sue somebody, you can't get mad at somebody or sue somebody for using your style, because that's culture. That was kind of the gist,
Interesting.
sum up what he said. But yeah, because I thought the same thing too. I'm like, one of the things you can tell this AI image editors, and there's a bunch of them now, you can say, I want a picture of this in the style of, can't think, like a Michelangelo or any of the stylistic type of painters over the years, and it'll make that change. If I have such a specific style of something, even like Eminem is a pretty good example. Like he has such a
Yeah.
specific way of rapping, but he can't sue somebody else for using that style. If they copy his exact words and verbiage, and
Yeah.
then you have a problem. And but yeah, for that style type stuff, I don't know. I mean, this is an uncharted territory, so like we don't know yet.
I think some lawyer will get creative to say, well, you scanned it, so you have to be storing it somewhere. They'll try to find an angle, but I mean, the art community is already a tough one to make money.
Yeah.
That I feel really bad for them, because this is Pandora's box. It's out. Nobody's going to stop. It's going to
I
get worse, and it's going to be harder for artists who create some beautiful stuff to get paid. So I feel really bad for them.
Yep. I was kicking myself a couple weeks ago because I don't know if you remember, I mean, I'm sure you do, last year and the year before, even more so, like the Bored Ape Yacht Club, all these NFTs that popped up, right? So like I was in that space trying to figure it out. I'm always trying to figure out how to make money from it or whatever. But I'm like, man, if only I had better graphic design skills, because some dickhead somewhere makes these like weird alien apes, and then they sell for 50 Ethereum, which is like $1.2 million or whatever it was at the time. I'm like, so this dickhead has created a series of 50 of these little cartoon apes and just made more money than any of
Yeah.
us will in our lifetimes ever. So I was like, God, I wish I could do that. Now, today, I could literally go onto this AI platform and say, draw me an ape, draw me an anteater snorting Coke, and then hit a button, the variations button, and it'll give you variations of that based on what you prompt. Like I want variations in different colors. I want variations with a different background. Like that's all these NFTs were. So I'm like, God, if this existed a year or two ago, I could have made so much freaking money.
What are you using for the art side?
uh this I was using Dolly, and that was like the main one. And
I didn't
it's
like my results on Dolly.
yeah, like it's not great. So the one I'm testing right now is Dream Studio, Dream Studio Lite. It's beta.dreamstudio.ai. But again, it's all about the prompts, and uh, I'm learning as I go with this stuff, especially on the image. I just started messing with the images like 4 or 5 days ago. I've been doing all the text stuff and geeking out on that for months and months, but then the images, I'm just learning as I go. But a friend of mine was telling me like the prompts. I don't have it saved, but he ends each of his prompts by saying, it's insane detail. Like he tells it what he wants, and then comma separated. It's almost like comma separated values, comma separated prompts. So it's like, I want a picture of an anteater snorting Coke, insane detail, 8K, 4K. And then he actually tells it what version of the software to use. So he always says version 4 because that's the latest version. Because if you tell it certain things and it thinks it can get away with using a lower version, lower detail level and all that, it will. And then you try to upscale it, you have to tell it to upscale. But in his mind, he's like, I know exactly what I want, and I want an insane detail level, and I want it at 8K or 4K or whatever, and I want you to use version 4 of the software. And then it spits out these freaking gorgeous images. And so again, garbage in, garbage out. I'm like, do this, do that basic stuff, and it's giving me stuff where I'm like, oh, it is technically what I asked for, but and then we're still getting, there's a lot of weirdness in the image stuff, especially. If you say, show me a woman in a yellow dress out in a field with the sun shining, holding an umbrella, she might look perfect, and then she'll have like 10 fingers. You just get some weird stuff every once in a while, specifically with humans and animals, because the machine's like learning, and I'm like, well, at this point, like you would think it has seen enough
Yeah.
people to know.
Like that's the detail it misses, not proportions, but
Right. Like everything else looks phenomenal. And then the lady's holding the umbrella with like 8 fingers. And you don't really notice it until, you're just like, oh my God, that's crazy. But she has 8 fingers. Like, that's weird.
so Jasper has art on there. Have you tried their art?
No, I'm not the like pro level that you have to be to get. So two things they have like a base level, which is where I'm at, where you get all the chat stuff and all of the templates, but then they have their boss level, I think they call it, which is the actual chat feature. So this is more like the open playground where you can have a running conversation. So that's what one of the reasons I use the GPT-3 is because I can have that running conversation. In Jasper, you've got the prompts and the templates, and then to get that chat part of it, you have to be in boss mode, and then that also
Okay.
images and all of that stuff. And I mean, that's $59 instead of 29. So I just don't need it because there's other free tools.
Right.
I'm sure it's great. I mean, I see the stuff that my buddy's putting out that works for Jasper, and I see what it does, and I'm like, but he's also a prompt master. And on that note, there's a prompt. I forget the name of it. I'd have to go look, but there's a like online prompt resource where you can go sell prompts, buy and sell. So he's starting to make money. You're selling this prompt for $6. Somebody searches for, I need a prompt that does this. You find it and you're like, okay, $3, $6, whatever. Like he's like, I'm not going to retire from this by any means, but he's like, I made my first $6 the other day.
Hey, did the work.
Yeah, I'll find the name of that because I sent it as a text message to another friend just a little bit ago.
Well, I noticed a long time ago, Gmail had these auto complete features for when you're writing an email. And I was shocked at how often I say, yeah, that works.
Yeah, so this one's called promptbase.com. It's a prompt marketplace. And you'll see when you land there, there's
Prompt base.
promptbase.com, yeah. So just like anything, we get guys that are like, all right, I'm better at this than you. How can I make money? Oh, I can sell my prompts. And they're just giving you almost like Mad Libs style, like whatever your product is, here's a prompt, just replace the X's with your product name, and theoretically it should work. And it does usually. It works good enough to at least have a starting point.
It'll be interesting to see where we are in a year with all this. Because I think it's going to move fast. I think Google does not like all the attention that ChatGPT is getting. And they've got something that they're supposed to be showing the world pretty soon. And I think they just want to get the attention back on them. So they'll probably put their thing out for free for a little while. There's going to be an AI race here.
They have two. I wrote the one down because I hadn't heard of it.
DeepMind.
Where's the page notes? So Lambda was what they've been working on forever, and then the newest one is Palm.
Okay.
I don't know what that stands for yet. I haven't that's the one I can't find any information on because they've pulled all the information off because it started going on its own. Whatever Palm is. And then they have another one called Muse, which is the Dolly competitor for the images. DeepMind, did you say DeepMind?
Yeah.
Yeah, so DeepMind is a whole different ball game.
Okay.
Is super interesting if you like chess. So DeepMind originally started as the chess competitor I think it was the first AI to beat a grandmaster. And so they've taken that model and now they're using it for other things. And I don't know what, strategy wise, like what DeepMind is going to plan all of our wars in the future. Sweet. That's again where stuff starts getting scary, is like you have all these very specific use cases for these. And what happens if we just bring them all together in the same room and like let them go?
Do you want to play a game? Remember that movie?
Right. So that, like I said, the DeepMind one, I was like, huh, interesting strategy wise, I guess. I don't know what it would be used for. We'll see. We'll find
Well,
out.
well, I appreciate your time. I want to give you a second to mention Breakthrough Broker, which is one of the tools that I tell all the agents I meet about. Do you want to give it a quick breakdown what Breakthrough Broker is?
Sure. Um, so the best way I can describe it, so Breakthrough Broker, there's no way to verify this as far as I know, but we've got to be the number one, like the number one resource for marketing for realtors in the world, because just the pure amount of free content that we have.
It's insane.
So it's it's a platform where you as a realtor, I as a realtor can log in if I need flyers, postcards, single property websites, like literally anything marketing related, we've got it in there. It's most likely free. You can go in and customize your logo, your headshot, your colors, and all of that. We offer printing. The printing's not free, obviously, but if you want to just download a PDF and print it at home, cool, it's free. And then we have an upgrade. So some of the stuff, like if I want to create a flyer, and this going back to the AI stuff, I was joking with somebody the other day, Bill, that runs Bear Printing, because now technically we're weird competitors, but we've been friends forever. So I was like, hey, wait till we start using AI to say, hey Siri, go pull MLS number, whatever, and make me a modern real estate flyer that's persuasive, that hits the target demographic, all these things, and it spits this out. Like, that's coming. But it also already exists because we have the ability to go put an MLS number in, press a button, and it spits out the flyers because it pulls the information in.
Sorry, still not sure about that.
Sorry, Siri. Don't mean to offend. But that already exists. And so in our upgraded, oh, come on. I turned you off, didn't I? No. She said, no need to apologize. All right, quit listening.
They're nice to us now, but wait.
Yeah, exactly. That's funny. But anyway, we have the free, like all this stuff for free, and then we have a paid version that has some better graphic templates, some upgrades. The coolest thing for me is single property website. I can put in the MLS number in, it auto populates it. I can still go edit it, but it creates like these beautiful single property sites, beautiful flyers, door knockers, brochures, everything that you could think of. And then we put out new stuff every month. It's really fun for me to work there as the marketing guy behind the scenes. But we have like 400,000 or so, 400,000 realtors actively using it. A bunch of title companies. That's usually where most people hear about it. So
that's insane.
Yep, some cool stuff. And like I said, I think we're the number one, like the number one largest resource for that in the world. I can't think of anything else even close. Canva, people are always like, oh, it's like Canva. I'm like, yeah, it's like Canva, except for everything is real estate. Canva, you have to go like find the template that you want and then go upload your photos and change do all that. Like, you can type in real estate and there's some designs in there, but all of our stuff is all real estate. So
yeah, no, I love Canva, use it all the time, but Breakthrough Broker is it's its own thing. It's as easy to use as Canva, but it is a streamlined, all the stuff you need that's actually pretty, because a lot of stuff in Canva is only
yeah.
So no, it's great stuff. And I
Yeah,
don't know how long they've been around.
11, 12 years. The two founders are actually realtors themselves. They ran a brokerage and they kind of saw this need for this, and then they sold their company and used that seed money to start Breakthrough Broker.
Yeah, this is one of the resources I have on the tools page on Roaring Agents. I really like it. So
nice. Thank
any
you.
last words for our future AI overlords?
No, I always tell people, like, if you want to connect with me on Facebook, mostly that's where I talk about this random stuff, and I always enjoy geeking out, as you know. so it's always my pleasure to do stuff like this. I love it.
Well, let's check back in a year to see if we're still in control and where things have changed to.
I'll have to check with my boss over here behind me to see if she'll let me.
All right. Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, man. Thank you.